Hi everyone, this is Katie, and I'm in a really unfortunate location to be recording this, and I already had the video super messed up by background noise to where I've had to start over and re-record. So I'm going to be really short and to the point if I can. It's really something that I don't do well, but I'm going to do my best here so that hopefully I get a good take of this without too much interruption. So in this video, I just want to talk about a huge thing that I'm doing to try and fulfill the promises I made to myself when I was little about things I'd do if I got free. I am working very hard on letting myself be more visibly autistic and dissociative on the street. There's a lot of things that I need to do in order to take care of myself as an autistic and dissociative person that I don't have the privacy I used to have when I was inside in order to do. And so I now have to face the very difficult task of doing these very unorthodox looking self-care practices more out in the open. But thankfully, this is something that I've always wanted to do, as I've always been fiercely proud in many ways of being both autistic and dissociative. I've always stood firmly against ableism, and throughout my childhood really fought all the internalization of the ableism around me that told me that I needed to hide these things. And while there are real safety risks involved in being visibly disabled on the streets, there's also a lot to be gained, and I think that it can do a lot of good for people who have these issues too, to see somebody so boldly expressing it for all to see. So while it's traumatic, I am putting a lot of work into the very positive thing of letting myself be more visibly me. The way that looks right now is we're letting ourselves carry stuffed animals in a way that people can see. We are letting ourselves get small and be visibly childlike in public. We're very careful not to let ourselves get little when talking to people we don't know, but we let ourselves be little with our partner. A partner also, while he doesn't identify as having DID, he does get small too, and so that is helping us a lot in feeling safe, knowing that both of us can be big and small at different times. There's just a lot there. Like I said, I'm trying to be succinct, so I'm going to keep going. More things. Let's see. Stimming is a huge one. I've struggled deeply in integrating around my autism and letting myself stim publicly, but now I kind of don't have a choice. There's a variety of things I do to help myself with this. One thing we found helpful is we've had this spiked bracelet, which we actually might have just lost, which is really unfortunate, but we still have to go through all our bags more thoroughly. Well, we may have actually lost it, but until yesterday, at least, we had this spiked bracelet that we could gently press on our skin, and not only does it look really cool and metal and all, but it is actually practical. We can kind of subtly press it against our skin, and if somebody were to pay attention, they would be able to see what we were doing, but it's still a little more covert, so it helps parts who feel unsafe stimming in public feel safer. Something else that's kind of covert that we do is we listen to a lot of metal and punk rock and goth music, and these are all things that one can easily headbang to. And so we make a point of listening to this music and publicly banging our head, which is kind of a form of rocking back and forth for us that helps us a lot. And the music itself can be really helpful. We've also been working with parts around the idea of plugging in our headphones without actually playing music for when we're not able to listen to music because it'd be too stimulating. But we will look like we're listening to music, and then we can bang our head as we go, and nobody would think much of it. We also have a stim that we like doing that we're letting ourselves do physically, where we just kind of move our arms back and forth, and it can look kind of like stretching or just a simple way of discharging energy that's less conspicuous. One of the big things that we want to do publicly that we have trouble letting ourselves still do is happy flapping, which is our absolute favorite stim, maybe second only to singing. we have a lot of trouble with the happy flapping in public because it feels so small and so vulnerable, and yeah, it's just oh, it really is the best, and we do want to do it more publicly. But singing is another huge one. We have made a lot of progress in letting ourselves sing in public. We have very little opportunities to sing where people won't hear us. Hold on, a truck just pulled up behind me, so this may be loud. Unfortunately, I really can't move where I am. So yeah, I'm going to try to finish up here. So the singing thing is huge. We've been singing as we walk, which can be difficult with the pack on our back. But we've been letting ourselves sing even if people can hear us, even if people think it's weird. Sometimes we even have to sing when we're like inside shopping, like we'll be grocery shopping and we'll be singing, and people will look at us weird, but one good thing is that we have a really good voice and we know it, and that helps a lot. We don't feel like we're, annoying too many people. And we kind of feel like since our voice is good, if they are really annoyed by it, then unless they have like sensory issues, like they're autistic, then maybe they're just kind of an asshole and it's their problem, not mine, if you feel me. So we're trying to have that attitude. And that's just absolutely mandatory in being homeless. No matter what, I think, having that attitude of if people don't like it, then they can suck it, basically. Because there's a lot of things that we just can't help but have to do publicly that people might find distasteful. And while we work hard to be considerate of others, at the same time, people who are housed largely expect us to simply not exist and are extremely resentful if they see us existing at all. And so to a degree, we have to be okay with disgusting people, with repulsing people, with angering people, because that's just how it's going to be. Yeah, that's not even so much about being autistic or dissociative as it is really just about being homeless. If we want to have a sense of self at all, then we're going to have to kind of claim our space. So we work hard at that. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say. One thing is that we used to play this game online called Neopets. It's this really old virtual pet game that littles in our system have liked ever since we ourselves are physically small. And we've played it on and off since we were a little kid. Parts intermittently will delete the account because it makes them feel unsafe in certain ways. And then other parts will reactivate or create a new one because you can't really get your account back once you delete it, But after several months of us not having a Neopets account, some parts decided to make one again last night. And this time we're going to be approaching it even healthier than we were before, and putting a lot of work into letting ourselves play on it in public where other people can see, where if they glanced at our phone, then they would see that's what we were doing. Because in the past we have struggled with fear that people would see how small we were inside if they saw us playing it, and that could make us a target. But we're going to work on playing it more publicly and, consistently reminding ourselves that most of the time people don't want to see what we're doing because we're homeless. People wouldn't probably pay much attention anyway, but especially because we're homeless, people are going to do their best to ignore us anyway. And so most people aren't going to notice if we're sitting on the street or in a coffee shop playing a game. Okay, I think I'm going to end this here. One last thing, really important that a part wants to say is that we have been working on specifically letting ourselves stim while we sing on the street for money, while we busk. And that's a huge thing, just a huge thing. Probably the biggest breakthrough we've had is that we're letting ourselves be visibly autistic and to a degree dissociative while we sing for money. And certainly not as a ploy, quite the opposite. We used to much more instinctively and unthinkingly mask our symptoms to try to force ourselves to make eye contact and kind of smile at people while we performed. We tried to keep ourselves from stimming so that we would both be less of a target and so that hopefully we would make more money, because without even really thinking about it, we just felt like that's what we had to do. If you want to be a good performer, we felt like, you gotta act more neurotypical. But now I'm realizing that that's totally unnecessary. I've been doing really well with the busking, making a really, amazing amount of money, even though I've been doing it very little, only just like an hour or two a week. I've been making a lot in that hour or two. And last week when I went out, I tried super hard to let myself stim, to not force eye contact, to just look autistic. And while I doubt that many people picked up that I was autistic and gave me money for that reason, I think that it proved to me that I certainly don't have to pretend to be neurotypical to be successful. And last time when I went busking, I didn't deal with any harassment as far as I could see. People were super nice. And so, yeah, I'm just really learning through the busking especially that it is okay to be openly myself. Okay, that's all I've got for this. It's kind of a hodgepodge. It's really anxious. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I can see so much of Rose in my face. It's crazy. But I'm older than I used to be when I came out in these videos as Rose. And as many of you know, Rose has integrated. Like, we don't use that name anymore, but we still very much have a child part that contains what Rose once was, more in separation. So yeah, we can still see like essence of Rose, very heavy. Integration is never a loss, only a gain. Yeah, okay, I'm getting distracted by the noise, so that's really all I got for this. Thanks.